Hello and welcome. This is Donna with Yoga for You. And today I'm going to offer a gentle practice. And this gentle practice is going to be all about space and depth. If you have available, maybe get a strap. If you don't have a strap, maybe a tie on a robe or a necktie, even a belt can be helpful. Towel, something like that you can work with. If you happen to have a block lying around or something that can lift the floor to you, please grab your block. And I always keep a blanket handy. That way, I've got it here if I need some extra cushioning or anything on my knees. So we're going to play around with the idea of creating a sense of space and alignment in the body first, and then moving towards a greater depth in the posture or the asana. So let's begin in child's pose today. If for any reason that bothers your knees can't bend that deeply or go into that deep of flexion, then feel free to adjust. Maybe you want a seated position instead. So we're going to make our way into a nice child's pose. And I'm going to start out my child's pose with my knees just a little closer together than I normally would do. And you can rest your forehead on the mat. You can stack your hands, make a little pillow for your forehead. Wiggle your hips a little side to side. And just make some space to settle into. And as you come to child's pose, the eyes close, our attention and awareness turns inwards. We begin to observe and follow the flow of breath in our bodies. Gradually, start to deepen the breath, taking a little bit longer inhalations, a little longer exhalations. Begin to start to turn the volume up on the breath so that you can hear your own breathing, referred to as Ujjayi Pranayama. Experience this breath not just in the belly, but in the side ribs and into the back body. Feel your torso expanding on the inhale and contracting on the exhale. And then if it feels appropriate to you, start to walk your knees a little wider. So we begin to make more space. So my knees are moving wide to the outer edges of my mat. And then I'm going to begin to walk my hands forward on the mat. Pressing down through the fingertips, getting a little lift through the elbows if that's possible. So we feel how we just change this posture just a little bit. And we can feel the difference, how we start to make a little more space in the body. Through the arms, the shoulders, the chest, the upper back, through the hips, the inner thighs, the outer hips. Just take a few rounds of breath here. And then slowly start to walk the hands back, realign the knees, and I'm going to turn towards the camera for a moment. We're going to take that right leg straight out to the right. Pivot the right toes forward so we maintain that sense of alignment through the leg and hip. I'm going to curl my back toes under my left toes just because I want to wake up that foot a little bit more. And we're going to start to shift back. Now you're going to feel you're going to start to probably experience a greater degree of stretch through that inner right thigh. Keep pressing through the pinky toe edge of that right foot. So we maintain a little lift through the inner knee and inner thigh. Then if you want and you feel comfortable stretching your arms forward, you can. Take a few rounds of breath here as we kind of just find the depth of this posture that's accessible for us. I want to feel the greatest degree of sensation through that inner thigh stretch that I can tolerate. And then shift forward, take that right leg and shift it all the way over to the left. Shoulders relax back. And now look over your left shoulder and see if you can see your right foot, creating more length along that right side body if possible. And then slowly come back through center. Bring that right leg in. As that left leg comes out, rotate the toes forward. Press through the pinky toe edge of the foot so it's not rolling in and collapsing that inner left knee. Press down. I'm going to curl my right toes under just because I like the way it feels. It brings more energetic action to that foot. And then start to shift your weight back a little. If you want, you can walk those hands forward as you drop a little lower, creating more space in that inner left thigh. And from that space we've created, we begin to find a deeper depth of the pose. Just take a few more rounds of breath here. And then shift forward, take that left leg and bring it off to the right side. Look over your right shoulder towards that left foot. My left shoulder gradually moves forward a little, my outer left hip moves back a little, and we create more space along the left side body here. And then bring that leg back in, and coming back to tabletop. Make sure that your hips are right over the knees. So my hips aren't dropping back as like a child's pose or coming forward like a plank pose. They're going to stay aligned. I'm going to curl my toes under so I start to bring that energetic action into the feet and legs. Begin to walk your hands forward. So they refer to this as puppy pose. Take your hands as far forward as it feels right for you. Distribute the weight outwards from the palms of the hands through the fingers, through the fingertips. And then if it feels all right, start to release the forehead in the direction of the mat. Draw your low belly in so you stay engaged through core. Now, if your head doesn't touch the mat, that's fine. You can stay more upright, keeping the back of the neck elongated. Now, take a few breaths here. Do your best to keep a lift through the armpits as if you're filling them up with helium. And then let the center of your chest melt in the direction of your mat. This is a big opening for the shoulders, the upper back. Take one more breath here. And then walk those hands back. Sit back for a moment. Roll out those shoulders because they might feel like a little sketchy right now. That was a lot of work for those shoulders. And then shake out the hands a little bit. If you're not wanting to move into down dog today for whatever reason, that's fine. You can work at doing that puppy pose. But if you're wanting to do downward facing dog, we're going to once again walk forward. Keep your wrist creases facing towards the front of the mat. Shift your hips back to elongate the arms and spine. Start to lift those knees. And start with bent knees. Feel like you're actively trying to press or stretch your mat forward through the hands. And use that action to drive the hips back. So we're really elongating that spine. We're making more space. Those armpits continue to fill up with helium. The chest melts a little bit. And then you can slowly begin to stretch those heels towards the mat. Now, if you want to just kind of walk it out a little bit, sway the hips from side to side, whatever calls to you to make this a little bit more comfortable. And then moving into your dog. Think first about alignment and creating as much space through the body that you can. And from that, we begin to find depth in our pose. Take one more round of breath from here. And then begin to walk those feet towards the hands, coming into your forward fold. Now, this is where the blocks can come in handy. I just grabbed one today. If you have two, that's fine. If you're having a hard time reaching the floor, slide that block in front of those toes and bring your hands to the block. So you're bringing the earth up to you. Keep a softness behind the knees as we fold forward. Now, if you have any issues where maybe your doctor said you shouldn't be building pressure in the head, say glaucoma, macular degeneration, something like that, you would lift up a little higher and keep your head level with the heart. Otherwise, if it's appropriate, you can drape down. Then inhale, rise to your fingertips. Get a lift through the heart and elongate the spine. Now pause here, don't pause the breath. Shoulders relax back. Long spine. When we come up with this half lift, what we're trying to achieve is space in our spine. And then we find more depth in the pose. 2 more times. Inhale, get a lift and create space. Exhale, draw the lower belly in and find the depth. 1 more round. Inhale, the lift for space. Exhale, we fold for the depth. And then inhale, lift the gaze. Add the arms and take your time as you rise to stand. Bring your hands to your heart and release. Shake that all out. Find mountain pose or Tadasana. Keep a softness behind the knees so you're not locking those knees out. Inhale, sweep the arms up and overhead. And now really start to reach. Reach through the right, reach through the left. And let's just do this a few times. Just enjoying this sensation of creating some more space in the body. Breathing. And then reach both hands up. Relax the tops of the shoulders away from the ears and start to stretch up a little more. Lift the gaze slightly. Create just a little space in the throat. And then release those hands down. Roll those shoulders a few times. And then inhale that right arm up. Bend the right elbow and bring those right fingertips right behind the skull just to rest. Slide the left hand down the left thigh and start to tilt towards the left. That right elbow is stretching up towards the ceiling. Now notice how much space you're creating in that right side body, between the ribs, between the bottom ribs and the hip. Now inhale, lift up and release. Next breath lifts that left arm up. We bend the elbow. And on the exhale, we start to move into that lateral flexion. Stretch the left elbow up. Create space in that left side body. Don't hold your breath. Keep breathing. And the next inhale, we're going to lift up and release. So we're going to do that again, but now with straight arm. Inhale that right arm up. This time, keep it straight. On the exhale, begin to slide into your side bend or lateral flexion. If it feels appropriate for your neck, gaze down at your left toes and gaze up. One more time, gazing down and gazing up. Then inhale up, exhale, release. Now you might have noticed that it was much more challenging to keep a full breath there. And that's all right. That's because we were compressing one side of the respiratory diaphragm a bit with that side bend. So that's natural. Just keep pushing that breath through. Inhale that left arm up. Exhale, start to move into that lateral flexion. Keep breathing here. I know it's harder to breathe. Then gaze down at the right toes and gaze up at the ceiling. One more time, gaze down at the toes and gaze up at the ceiling. Then inhale up and exhale, release. Notice if you don't feel a little different through the torso, through those lateral flexions or those side bending. Now grab hold if you have a block or something else you can use. If you don't worry about it. But we're going to start out with that block on its highest level. Now, if you don't have a block, maybe you just bring your hands to right above the knee or right below the knee. Just don't press into your own knee. So moving into these forward folds. Inhale, stretch those arms out. Now start to hinge from the hip creases and reach those hands to that block or the thighs, whichever works for you. Shoulders slide back, lift your chest, and exhale, begin to fold as deeply as you can. So my crown of the head can actually rest on the block at this time. I'm not actually allowing it to touch, but it could. So I'm lengthening up through the backs of the legs, creating more space through those hamstrings. Now inhale. Find that lift to create space in your spine and rise up. Now I'm going to take this block and I'm going to turn it down to the next lower level. So now if your hands were on your thighs, maybe you slide your hands below the knees to the shins, or you find a block. If you were just fine where it was, then leave it there. Breathe in, reach the arms overhead. Hinge at the hip creases, softness in the knees, long spine, and reach for that block or those shins. Breathe in. Find the lift to create space. As you exhale, bend your elbows and find the depth of the pose. If you feel like more weight has rocked back towards your heels and bum, rock a little weight forward. So we're distributing the weight more evenly and aligning those hips more over those ankles. Now inhale. Find that lift, create that space, and take your time as we rise back up. Now, I'm going to take my block and I'm going to place it at its lower level. If you're not using a block, perhaps you slide your hands down in the direction of the ankles, the feet, or the mat, wherever you can comfortably reach. Breathe in, the arms reach. Hinge at the hip creases, soft knees. Reach for the block or the legs. Inhale for the lift. Create space in your spine. As you exhale, bend your elbows. Find that greater depth in your pose. Shoulders tend to want to sag towards the ears, so gently start to lift the shoulders away from the ears and create more space in the neck. Now inhale, find that lift, hands to the hips, and take your time as you rise up. Now you're welcome. We're going to do some half sun salutations. You're welcome to use the block to bring your hands to if that's more comfortable, or just set it aside at this time. Inhale, arms rise and reach. Exhale, soft knees. We're going to fold forward, reaching for the block or the earth. Inhale. Either rise to your fingertips, but if that doesn't give you quite enough elongation to the spine, bring your hands to your shins. Exhale, slide down for that depth. Inhale, find the lift, reach out, rise up. Exhale, flow those hands down by your side. Let's do that again. Breathe in, reaching. Exhale, folding, find depth. Inhale for the lift, find space. Exhale for the depth. Inhale for the lift, and the arms rise and reach. Exhale, flow the hands down by the side. Let's do one more. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, flow forward, Uttanasana. Inhale for the lift, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale for the depth. Inhale for the lift, add the arms, rise to stand. Exhale, release those hands down. Coming into a wide angle. Step 1 foot back. So we have this nice wide angle facing the long edge of our mat. Stand up nice and tall. Inhale, sweep those arms up and overhead. And on your exhale, bring your hands to your hips. Roll the shoulders back. Inhale here, and on your exhale, hinge at the hip creases, keeping a little bit of softness behind the knees, and fold forward, allowing the crown of the head to drape to the earth if it's appropriate for you to do so. Roll your shoulders up and back, and start to energetically hug your elbows towards midline or towards one another. Now inhale, see if you can find some lift here. Exhale for some depth. Inhale for that lift. Take your time and rise to stand. Now flip your left foot out so it's facing away from you. Keep your weight in that back leg and start to bend the front knee. So if the weight transitions to that front leg, then we begin to lean forward. So try your best to keep your shoulders aligned over your hips as we bend that left knee. Push through that right leg. Extend the arms straight out. Warrior 2. Your gaze is out over those left fingertips. Now, depending on the health of that front knee, we're going to inhale here. And as we exhale, we perhaps drop those hips and pelvis a little lower. Take a breath here. And if you've got anything more, see if you can drop deeper into the pose. Pause here, find the breath. And then bring your hands to your hips, straighten your left leg and turn the legs in. So now once again, everyone gets to meet Bailey. This is my big bull mastiff girl. So whenever I do this, she always has to check out what I'm doing. Now turn the right toes the other direction. Keep your weight in that back leg. Shoulders stay over the hips. Don't let your shoulders shift towards that front knee. Bend that front knee. Make sure that it maintains alignment and sweep those arms out. Gaze over the right fingertips. Breathe here. And as you exhale, see if you can sink a little deeper. Inhale here. And if you can, maybe come a little deeper. So we're maintaining the alignment in the pose as we work towards greater depth. And then bring your hands to your hips, straighten that right leg, turn it in. Inhale here. Now I walked my feet in a little closer because I'm getting ready to fold forward. As we exhale, hinge at your hip creases, slide your hands down, and see if you can get hold of your ankles. Shoulders wrap back. And find greater depth into your pose. Again here, notice if your weight's shifting back towards your bum. Shift your weight slightly forward and you'll feel a greater depth of stretch in the backs of the legs, those hamstrings. Now inhale for the lift and rise up. Pause here. Now let's take that left foot and we're flipping it out again. So it's facing the other direction. This time both legs stay straight. Just work it, not locking or hyperextending that left knee. The arms come out. Now release your right hand to your hip. So we're just forgetting about it for a while. We're going to hinge forward and try to maintain space in the waistline. So if you're not sure what I mean, if I'm rounding, I'm shortening my left waistline right now. So we're reaching, Notice I'm keeping the soft bend in that left knee. Now pull it back into alignment. Again, hinge forward as if you're reaching for something. And then pull it back in. Now this last time, we're going to hinge forward. Release your left hand above the knee or below the knee. Wrap that right shoulder open. Now this is our triangle position, Trikonasana. You can stay here or begin to slide down. Now notice at what point you begin to roll forward. You've gone too far. Back it up. Maintain the alignment as you start to work towards depth. Perhaps the right hand reaches up. Gaze could be up, straight, or down, wherever it feels best for your neck. Just don't let your head drape over. Take one more breath here. Bring the right hand down to the hip. Slide yourself up and pivot your left toes forward. Right toes pivot out. Find that micro bend in the front knee, especially when the weight of the body shifts over that leg. The tendency is to lock it out. Reach your arms out. And then hinge forward. Maintain length, space in your ribs. And then pull it back. And now hinge forward. And pull it back. Last time, I'm going to bring my left hand down to my hip. We're going to hinge forward. Release that right hand above or below your knee. Wrap that left shoulder back, lean back. Now, can you work at maintaining alignment and space as we start to move towards a greater degree of depth? Left hand can reach towards the ceiling. Gaze up, straight, or down. Breathe here. And now I'm going to come back up, release the hands from the hips, and turn those toes in. Might want to walk the toes in a little more. Inhale, this time reach both arms overhead. On your exhale, hinging at the hip creases, reach for the floor. If the floor is not an option, reach for your block. Inhale, rise to your fingertips, find that lift, create space, and exhale, find the depth in your forward fold. Check in again. Are we leaning the weight back? Shift the weight forward just enough that you feel that greater degree of stretch in the backs of the legs. Now inhale, heart rises. Hands to your hips, rise up. Whew. Now turn the left toes. This time, I'm going to hop that right foot in. And I'm just orienting my body towards that left side. So my toes, my hips, my chest, everything's facing the same direction. Hands on your hips. I'm going to put a micro bend in that left knee because I know I'm bringing the weight over that fulcrum point. So bend in the hip creases, shoulders back, rise up onto the right toes. Now gaze straight down as you draw your low belly in and see if you can float your right foot up. So maybe we just start barely lifting it off the floor. Pivot the right toes down so that the hips and sacrum stay level, and then set it back down. Breathe here. We're going to do this 2 more times. Hinge forward, micro bend your standing leg. Float your right leg up. It might come a little higher now. Keep pivoting those toes down. And then come back and pause. Notice if you're holding your breath. If suddenly you're like catching that breath, that means you are holding it. 1 more time. Hinge forward, shift forward, weight on the left foot. As the right leg lifts, rotate those toes down. Now your arms can go out. They can come into the heart. Breathe here, warrior 3. And then slowly, release down. Pivot, and let's pivot to that other side. So I'm going to start orienting my whole body, including my toes, forward. Hands at your hips. Micro bend that front knee. Hinge at your hip creases, so the spine shouldn't be rounding here. We hinge forward, shift our weight forward, and try and pick up that left foot, pointing the toes down. And then we're going to set it down and shift back. Again, we're going to shift forward, look down, see if you can float that left leg up, pivot the left toes down, and then shift back. Now, last time, you're going to go as deep in a pose as you feel comfortable. We're going to shift forward, float that left leg up, hands can be out, you can have them at your heart. Breathe here, and come back. Pivot those toes in. Walk in, shake that out a little bit. Coming into mountain pose at the front of your mat. Find the space that you've been trying to cultivate. Root down through the feet into the earth. Soft knees. Lift the crown of the head towards the ceiling. Inhale, sweep the arms up. On your exhale, fold forward, reach for the earth or the block. Inhale, find that lift, create space. And on your exhale, we're going to step that right foot all the way to the back of the mat. Now I'm going to once again face the camera. That left leg's going to come back, and then we're going to release the knee down. So set the knee down onto, this is where I really like a blanket, also a block. You could bring your right hand to the block as your left forearm comes to that left knee. So we're in this low lunge. Gently hug that outer left hip back just a little. It's a very subtle movement. Now we know, especially through a lot of my classes that I've been offering here on YouTube, we choose how deep we want to go into this pose. I'm going to flip around just briefly. So if I'm really tight through my hip flexors here in that right groin, I might be much more upright. Or as I start to move into that stretch, I can start to sink deeper. I'm energetically stretching my left toes back behind me. Just find a steady breath here. So here is one of the postures or asanas where we can really get a sense of that space and depth that we're working at cultivating. We know that if we sink a little too deep, we might need to back out. We might start to feel a little sketchy there in those right hip flexors. Now begin to straighten that left leg. Roll the left toes up towards the ceiling. Hands can be on blocks or on the floor. Activate your left foot strongly. Press to the mound of the big toe. Shoulders slide back. Now we don't want to lose the space that we've created by rounding here. So as the shoulders hug back, draw your heart forward. Create as much space in this pose as you can. Find that steady breath. And then shift forward. We're going to lift up that right knee and step that right foot forward to meet the left. Find your forward fold. Inhale for that lift, that space. Exhale for depth. And this time step that left foot all the way back. Release the knee down. Once again, maybe you're finding that block under the left hand. Hug the outer left hip back a little. Now you play around with this low lunge. To what degree a stretch feels accessible for you today? It may not be the same one you felt yesterday or you'll feel tomorrow. We keep the chest lifted. And we start to move towards that greater degree of depth in our lunge. Keep breathing. Just a couple more rounds of breath here as we explore this posture. And then begin to shift your hips back as you straighten that right leg. Roll the toes up, press through the mound of that right big toe. Now remember, we want to continue creating space. So shoulders slide back, chest or sternum slides forward. So we took the stretch where we were in the low lunge from the hip flexors till now we're working at stretching the back of the leg, creating more space in those hamstring muscles. Take one more breath here. And then shift forward, lift that left knee off the mat and step forward into your forward fold. Inhale for your lift, create space. Exhale, work towards that depth. Inhale, create space, add the arms, take your time as you rise up. Exhale, bring your hands to your heart and release the hands down. Let's take a little sun salutation. We're going to take it all the way to the floor. Inhale, reach the arms overhead. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale for the lift, the space. Exhale for the depth, step back. Let's go right to down dog. If you're not doing down dog, that puppy pose is an option or child's pose. In down dog, first create your alignment. Then start to lengthen, create space. Low belly and front ribs gently draw in. And then we start to work towards the depth. Whether that is melting the heart closer towards the floor or the back thighs, or whether it's pressing those heels towards the floor. Take one more breath. And then release the knees to the mat. Inhale into your cow shape, create space in the front body. Exhale into your cat, space in the back body. 2 more times, breathing in and breathing out. 1 more time. And on your exhale, press back to child's pose where we began our practice together. Find the breath. And then slowly make your way up. And let's make our way to a seat. If your hips are really tight, and you want to take your blanket, if you have one, or a towel, something like that, and you want to fold it and elevate your hips by sitting up just kind of on the edge of the blanket. If I sit on the edge of the blanket, it allows my hips to work towards that forward pelvic tilt, all right, or that anterior pelvic tilt, which is what I would ideally like. Take your right leg and bring it slightly out to the right as that left foot comes in towards the body. And remember, you might choose to be sitting on the edge of your blanket here. Activate that right foot. Bring your right hand down to the right shin. If you don't like that, you could always bring your block and rest your hand on the block as well. Now, bring your left hand to your hip, roll your left shoulder open, and peek over the left shoulder. You might sit here and think, you know, this is enough work for me right now. I don't need or want to go any further. But if you feel like you want to go further, inhale that left arm up, and then bend the elbow. We did this at the beginning of practice. Allow that left elbow to spin open. And then start to slide deeper to the right. That left elbow is going to stretch towards the ceiling. Breathe here. So we can feel that pretty generous stretch the space we're creating in that left side body. If it feels a bit too much, back it off a little bit. Only if your shoulder joint feels nice and healthy, you can take that left arm and stretch it out to the left. If it's bothering your neck, just let the gaze drift down to the inside of that right knee. Now inhale, rise up, and just pause a moment. We're often so anxious to just hurry through our day, hurry through our chores and the things that we're doing, that we don't often take the time to just stop and feel. Take that left hand behind you, roll the shoulder open, and cross that right arm. Now think of more space before you try to twist into the depth. So we're going to sit up taller and then very gently move into a little twist. You're not going to go very far here, so don't try to push it. And then come back through center. Take that left leg out as that right foot comes in. Activate your left foot. Get your Barbie foot. If you're familiar with that term, that's an Anusara term, or a floint, if you like that. Bring your left hand to the shin or to a block. Roll that right shoulder open and look over your right shoulder. And you're probably feeling some twisting happening here through the torso. If you'd like, inhale that right arm up. Bring the fingertips behind the skull. As you start to move into that lateral flexion, let that right elbow swing open. And the further we go, the more that right elbow reaches towards the ceiling. And only do this if it feels accessible. If you'd like, just gaze down. It relieves a bit of tension on the cervical spine, the neck muscles, or keep the gaze forward. Now, if your right shoulder joint's feeling nice and healthy today, you can begin to extend that right arm out. It's going to increase the degree of stretch along that right side body. And then inhale, rise up, and pause. These side bend stretches are very energizing postures. So I wouldn't do a lot of them maybe before you're going to go to bed or if you're going to lie down and rest a bit, because they are very energizing. Now bring that right hand back. Roll the shoulder open as the left arm crosses. Now remember, before we twist, we want to create space. So sit up tall and then gently move into the depth of the twist. And then slowly make your way back. Bring that left foot in, and the soles of the feet can come together into Cobbler Pose, bound angle, Baddha Konasana. Sit up nice and tall. Remember, we continue to try to create space before we move into the depth of the pose. So we sit up tall. If you want, the low belly draws in. We hinge at the hip creases, and we're hinging forward. So I'm trying to maintain this space that I've created in my spine. I'm going to bring my gaze down towards my toes. So the back of my neck remains elongated. You'll probably feel, if you're looking at the camera, if you look up, how you're compressing the cervical vertebra a little. So look down, create that space. If you feel like you can go deeper, and as long as you don't have a spinal issue such as osteoporosis, osteopenia, or anything that can affect the spine, you can start to bow and round. Shoulders, relax them away from the ears. Continue to draw the lower abdominals back towards the spine, but not gripping or squeezing, but instead an engagement. Now to come out of the pose, we're thinking of creating space again. So lift your gaze, lengthen your heart forward, and begin to rise up. Bring those inner thighs together and extend those legs out. Now I always caution people, whenever you're going to do a seated forward fold, such as this one's Paschimottanasana. If you've got lumbar disc issues, such as say herniated bulging discs, sometimes a seated forward fold is not always your best option. All right, so be aware of that. If your hamstrings, I'm so sorry, allergies. If your hamstrings are really tight, what happens is when you start to try to hinge forward, your hamstrings prevent that and it pulls you into a C shape, making you round and press into that lumbar spine. So when we start here, we're going to lift up and try to maintain some nice space in the lumbar spine. Now, I had invited you to grab something, a strap, a towel, a belt, whatever you might have. Now, if you don't have anything, that's okay as well. Do the best you can. But otherwise, you can hook that strap over those toes. Now, I don't often use a strap. Of course, I don't really need one. But even for those that do, I don't often use a strap in this pose. And I'm going to tell you why. I tend to see people playing a tug of war. So they're pulling themselves forward with the strap. Instead, the strap just should be an extension of your arms. So you hold on the strap, relax those shoulders, and we're doing our best to hinge at the hip creases. Now, if your tight hamstrings are preventing that, you could always try bending your knees and, of course, elevating your hips up onto that folded blanket. So this might be your work. I'm going to start to bring my chin in towards my throat so the back of my neck remains elongated. Now here, you will fold as deeply as you are comfortable and that it's healthy for your spine to do so. Once I get into this pose, that's not all that she wrote, all right? So I work at this idea of space and depth as I come into this forward fold. So the shoulders are relaxed. I inhale and lift my chest a little, and it might be so subtle that no one watching you would even realize you're moving. I lengthen the center of my chest towards my toes, and as I exhale, I find the greater depth in the pose. I inhale for a little more length, and I exhale for that depth. One more time like this dynamically. Inhale for length, exhale for depth. And this is where you might choose to stay. Just pausing in this forward fold. And once again, if this is not appropriate for you, then your work is going to be much higher up. But either way, you're going to still get a nice stretch. And then inhale, lengthen, and rise up. Go ahead and place those feet wide on the mat. Lean back, but don't collapse into your chest. Shoulders back, and let's windshield wiper a little. Just rocking the knees from side to side. If you have knee issues, maybe less range of motion, so it shouldn't hurt you. And then take it out, stretch it out a little. Now I'm going to make sure that I have my strap with me as I release down. So coming onto your back, feet planted, just take a moment just to feel. Feel into the natural curvatures of your own spine. I bring this up a lot in our practice because I want each of you to be very comfortable with the knowledge of your own spine. So everyone is going to have a little bit different degree of curve. We all should have a little bit of a curve in the lumbar spine, the low back. Then the middle spine, the thoracic kind of arcs back down and presses into the floor. And then the cervical spine, the back of the neck, should gently arch away from the floor again. When we give this knowledge or proprioception of our own body and its natural curves, it can help us in any of our postures so that we're more able to find neutral. Now grab hold of your strap. If you don't have a strap, that's fine. We're going to hug the right knee into the chest, flexing the foot. You can either interlace your hands behind the thigh or hook the strap over that foot. Extend the right leg up. Now, if that's just not a possibility for you, your hamstrings are too tight, you can always take that leg further forward. And when I say forward, I'm meaning actually towards the bottom of your mat. Hold on to the strap, but slide your hands down the length of the strap so the backs of the shoulders are relaxed. And then we start to play with the depth of the pose. Some of you might be able to draw that right leg in closer towards the head, the body, without letting your bum roll off the floor. That's a little bit of cheating. We want to try and maintain the natural curves of the spine. That's why I had you really recognize them, bring an awareness to them when we started. Now, if you're pretty flexible, you might feel really comfortable extending that left leg along the length of the floor, flexing that foot as well. This is a much more appropriate and functional way to get a nice stretch through the hamstrings if you've got low back issues. It supports the low back. So we're just really working on those hamstrings here. You probably feel it up into your calf muscles, maybe even the Achilles tendon a little bit. And now if your left leg is extended, just slide it in, unhook that foot, and release it down. And just pause a moment just to feel any difference. And then we hug that left knee in, flexing the foot. And either you're interlacing your hand to hold the thigh or you're hooking your strap. Press that foot upwards. If you're shaking really bad here or the knee is really bent, you can try moving that leg further away from the body. Make sure that the straps, you're relaxing your hold on the strap so that the shoulders are relaxed down on the mat. No sense in stretching the back of the leg and putting tension on the upper body as well. If you enjoyed extending that leg, you can extend the right leg out, but flex that foot as well. Just keep breathing here. Take one more breath here. Then slide that right leg back in. If you have it extended, release the strap and place that left foot down and pause. And we're going to take the same thing into a little twist. Right leg's going to come in. I'm going to hook the strap or you're going to hold the leg. This time I'm going to have you extend that left leg. Even if it feels tight, you can always take this right leg a little less a stretch if that feels better. Now hold both ends of the strap in your left hand and reach your right arm out to the right. Spin your palm down so you've got some support. You're pressing into the earth. And then slowly guide this right leg across the body. I'm going to allow my right hip to roll up in the direction of the ceiling. Only take the right leg as far to the left as you can keep your right shoulder on the mat. Then slowly let your gaze turn to the right if that feels comfortable for your neck to do so. I'm hoping here you're feeling some degree of stretch on the outside of the right thigh and into the outer right hip. That is the IT band and those hip stabilizing muscles. And then slowly bring it back in. Slide that left foot in for support and release that right leg. Second side, we're going to hug that left foot. Extend the right leg. Hold the strap in the right, both ends of the strap in the right hand and reach your left arm out. And then slowly start to take that left leg over. Allow the hip to begin to roll up as you move into the twist. Keep your left shoulder on the mat. Turn your gaze to the left. Now, if this feels like too deep of twist for your spine, any parts of the body that feel uncomfortable, you can always bend the knee and do a little easier twist than having that leg extended. This does make it more challenging. And then we slowly bring everything back to neutral. Slide that right foot in, unhook. And I'm going to set that strap aside. Pause here a moment. Take your arms wide, heel toe your feet to the outer edges of your mat. And once again, a little windshield wiper, just rocking those legs. This can be good for low back, for the outer hips. Just maintaining this range of motion, this functional movement. And then heel toe those feet back in. Give yourself a hug. Shoulders stay relaxed away from the ears. If you'd like to rock yourself a little, this can be very nurturing for our nervous system. And if you have a really healthy neck, you can curl your forehead towards your knees. Create a little bit more space in the back of the neck. Then when we release the head down, we work into that depth. Rock your head gently from side to side. And then one leg at a time. Extend one leg out. And don't just stop there. Flex that foot. So you're pressing through the heel and creating more space in the back of that leg. Then you can release. Take that second leg out, flex it, and release it. Let the legs flop open. Now I like to arch my chest up slightly, roll my shoulder blades underneath me, and relax. It gives me more space across the chest and the upper back. Release the hands down. Close your eyes. Begin to experience the body relaxing. Little by little, gradually, we feel this release. Feel the extremities getting heavier, the arms and the legs. The eyes are closed, so our awareness is once again turned inwards. And just take a moment here and observe your flow of breath. We're not necessarily trying to cultivate a particular type of breathing or pranayama, but we're just observing the space between the breaths, the depth of our breath at this time. And with your eyes closed, just try to observe the space that surrounds you. Noticing the floor beneath you, the four walls, the ceiling or sky above you, depending on where you're practicing. Notice the space that you take up on your own mat. Notice the space within the body, the space within your mouth, the nostrils, the ear canals. And as you relax deeper, we begin to explore the depth of this relaxation pose. Our practice helps to learn to hold our space when times become difficult or challenging. Stay here for as long as you need or want. I thank you for spending this time with me as we explore the space and depth within our practice in this gentle practice. Go on and have a wonderful rest of your day. Namaste.